It's a scene.
Hello YouTubers, I'm wearing my tinfoil hat today because all my other hats are at the dry cleaners. Now before I proceed, here's a warning, this is going to be a spoiler for the movie COMA. So I just rewatched it and I had seen it as a kid and I had remembered it fondly. It was a conspiracy thriller with some scenes that were very creepy in all the right ways, but rewatching it in 2026 gave it a whole new meaning. Because this movie I realized was perfect for explaining conspiracies, how they work, and most of all, how to talk about them. The phrase conspiracy theorist is probably one of the most controversial labels today. Now, if you don't like conspiracy theories and you roll your eyes at anything that remotely sounds like one, this video is for you. Also, if you are a conspiracy theorist and wear that label proudly, this video is for you too. Maybe in the past you were discussing things and you either said or you heard the words, well, if it was a conspiracy, then everyone would have to be in on it. Or maybe something like, well, I gave them the facts and they still haven't changed their minds. How do I change their minds? Well, dear viewers, I'm here to tell you we can discuss this, and the movie COMA is a great vehicle to do so. So let's talk about the movie. The main protagonist is a woman, and there is a lot of feminist messaging, but it doesn't come off as a lecture to the audience. The feminist angle actually enhances the story. Dr. Susan Wheeler works at Boston Memorial Hospital alongside her boyfriend, Dr. Mark Bellows. She's all about the medicine. He's all about the politics. She's also a modern, independent woman, and she often gets annoyed when her boyfriend doesn't treat her like an equal, which leads to arguments.
Honey, I'm gonna take a shower. Could you grab me a beer before you start dinner?
Hey, Mark, get your own beer.
And he walks around mumbling to himself.
Goddamn doctors. Couldn't I fall in love with a nurse?
Because I guess Mark, being a doctor himself, he knows they're all uppity, know-it-all brats with a godlike complex. So these arguments tend to end up with Susan going home for the night.
All you care about is being chief resident.
You don't really want a relationship. You don't want a lover. You want a goddamn wife.
Sounds like Mark is projecting. But the next day at work, tempers have cooled and they're apologizing to each other.
About segment. Hi.
Hi.
I'm really sorry about last night.
So am I.
You want to have some lunch?
I have class.
So off she goes to class, and she's dancing and having a good time with her best friend. However, her friend Nancy is nervous because she's pregnant, and she's scheduled for an abortion the following day at Boston Memorial. Susan reassures her it's a simple in-and-out procedure, done all the time, nothing to worry about. The next scene, Nancy's on the operating table, and this scene sets the stage really well, because this is a teaching hospital, so the doctor is constantly explaining what he's doing to his students, and that provides great natural exposition for the audience.
And even though she's unconscious, those pupils should still react to light.
So can you guess what happens next? Well, Nancy does stay alive, but she slips into a coma.
Nance, can you give me a cough, please?
No cough, and the pupils are not responding to light, so she is officially in a coma. Now, Susan is upset, of course, but she holds it together. She takes Nancy's chart and studies it, trying to figure out what happened and how a young, fit, healthy woman would just slip into a coma from a simple procedure. But she's too calm for her boyfriend to understand. Like, aren't girls supposed to get all emotional and cry and shit?
You know, if it had been a friend of mine, I don't know if I'd have been that cool.
Maybe Susan feels a lot worse than she's letting on, but she knows the moment she breaks into tears, the men are going to get patronizing and condescending, and she is very protective when it comes to her image. You just don't want to be that person who cried at work.
It's well documented that telothane causes liver damage and severe side effects in a small percentage of surgical cases. That's just the risk of anesthesia.
Honey, I know you're upset.
You think because I'm a woman I'm going to be upset? I'm fine, Mark.
Well, Susan, I think you're overcompensating. It's perfectly normal to be upset over your friend's death or coma. I need to pause right here because I have something important to say. Susan is actually handling this perfectly. Despite being a jaded doctor who's no stranger to comas and deaths, she is emotionally invested in this particular coma. And again, as a doctor, she knows about medical errors and negligence, and she wants to rule them out. Certainly in that moment, if she had been emotional or exhibited any doubts about the coma being coincidental, there would have been huge resistance. She would have been labeled hysterical, and they'd tell her she was upset and just looking for something or someone else to blame. And yet, it's emotional investment that drives you hard enough to ask the hard questions and look for satisfying answers. Without emotional investment, why would you care enough to rock boats? But getting too emotional does hurt your credibility, even when you're all about the facts.
As far as I can determine, there are no unusual aspects except that the patient was tissue typed.
Tissue type for DNC? There's gotta be some mistake.
Here's where the divergence happens. If you're invested enough to ask questions, you keep looking for satisfying answers. If you don't give a shit, you're always ready to accept a plausible excuse, or more often provide one, and call it a day.
Well, that's not the first time the lab has run a test on the wrong patient.
But now Susan wants to know why the mistake happened, if that's what it is.
Nancy's problem was not caused by a wrong lab test.
Yes, Dr. Boyfriend, that's true. But the fact that it exists at all is questionable, and your answer was to dismiss it as a medical error, which means errors are made, and were made in this case. So now Susan goes to the lab to find out why they tissue typed Nancy. And the lab technician tells her that Central Computer periodically chooses patients randomly to tissue type just as a test. So next she goes to Central Computer, and it turns out that the data they store can't be retrieved the way she's asking.
Let's say I wanted a list of all the patients who had tissue typing in the last month.
Same thing, not coded.
And when she asks him what Central Computer is even for, he explains that the system was not installed for medical purposes, it was installed for billing purposes. So Susan adjusts her questions accordingly.
I want a list of all surgical patients with general category of coma in the past year.
You sure you want?
Turns out it was a very long list. And while she's thinking that seems like too many coma outcomes, Doctor, I'm thinking about something else right now, is ready with a plausible excuse.
I had no idea.
It's a big hospital. Are you married or what?
So she studies the list. She's trying to find a pattern or something that these patients might have had in common. But nothing jumps out at first. Different medical histories, different surgeons, different anesthetists. Meanwhile, an irritated Mark chastises her because she was not authorized to get the data. It was a breach of protocol for her to get it. Susan tries to redirect his attention to the issue of comas, and he gives her another version of, it's a big hospital.
240 names, 10 are young people admitted for minor procedures.
The risk of surgical anesthesia is 6 per 100,000. Now, in a hospital this size, 10 patients in a year is not surprising. So what the hell are you doing?
She's doing math, Mark. I thought boys were supposed to be good at math. So these tragic deaths are just statistics, which is easy to shrug off when patients are older and sicker, both by doctors and by family. But Mark didn't address that part about a good portion being young and healthy. Moving on, now Susan is doing the rounds with a new patient, an athlete with a knee injury played by Tom Selleck. Funny thing, on rewatch, I remembered Tom Selleck was in this movie, but I didn't remember Michael Douglas being the boyfriend. Maybe because back then Michael Douglas wasn't anyone to me yet, but I digress. Magnum PI is just another young, fit, healthy person waiting for a simple-ish procedure. But Susan is called in by Big Boss Man because of her breach with Central Computer, and he uses all the tricks of intimidation.
An unauthorized entry was made last night. We put the young man on probation. I understand you have personal reasons for being under stress. I certainly don't want to lose a good surgical resident. Well, I think we can handle this, Sue. I'll keep the evidence, and we'll just forget it ever happened, all right?
Now, of course, this is a movie and not real life. Events that are pretty mundane in real life are always meaningful in movies, or else why would they be there? So as a viewer, this scene primes you to wonder if this man has his own reasons for wanting to get rid of the evidence, as he calls it. It kind of reminds me of that scene from The Count of Monte Cristo, when you know that burning the letter means he's in trouble. The only thing that would have been worse if he had asked her, has anyone else seen this list? Now, you already know this is a movie about a conspiracy and there's a bad guy to find, and you're engaged in looking for clues. At this point in the movie, you'd either decide he's the bad guy, or that it's too early for the bad guy reveal and this one is just a red herring. He's not in on it. He's just a stickler for the rules, maybe a bit of an asshole. Either way, you're thinking it through, staying open-minded and looking for more clues and certainty. In real life, though, most people would just be focused on the fact that the boss is pissed and on the relief they feel when he lets it go. And when he calls it evidence, it would be an intimidating trick to put them on the defensive, which would totally work. But wait, there's more. He wants her to see someone, and he names very specifically who she should see and tells her that keeping her job is conditional on it. So, I don't know what the workplace was like in the 70s, but we know today that that's a big red flag. This is HR trying to set down the paperwork before they get rid of you. Okay, Susan, be very careful with what you share and with the words that you use.
I think it's unfair, that's all. Everybody's on my back about this. I mean, there's Mark whining about how I can't make a commitment, I'm cold, and I want a wife, and I'm afraid of intimacy. And then this thing happens to Nancy, and she's my best friend, just about. I've known her since boarding school. And then everybody jumps on my back and acts like I'm neurotic or something, and I'm not doing my job.
No, Susan, I know it feels good to let it out, but this doctor is not your therapist. If you want to let it out, hire your own therapist, or better yet, talk to a real friend. Maybe someone you and Nancy had in common, someone who'd, give a shit.
There have been 10 cases of unexplained coma in young, healthy patients in the last year. Now, don't you find that surprising?
Go ahead, guess. Guess what he says.
This hospital does 30,000 operations a year. Now, I'm not surprised if you turn out with serious, unexplained side effects.
Can we do some quick mathing? 6 per 100,000 means that this hospital should see between 1 and 2 cases a year, and what they've got is 10. And that's after dismissing the remaining 230 cases.
Medicine isn't perfect.
Here we go again with the same thing. It happens to some people, and this is a big hospital. It's like everyone's trained on these talking points. Tell me if you've ever related to this feeling when a new phrase is born overnight and the next day everyone is repeating it like they just got the memo. It's not that everyone thinks the same thing because it's the right thing. It's that everyone thinks the same thing for the same reasons within the same framework and using the same words. And you're put off by how inorganic and unthinking it feels. Like nobody arrived at this conclusion by thinking it through themselves. Now, the shrink reports back to the boss, and his diagnosis is she's grieving, she's under stress, she's paranoid, but I don't think she'll be any more trouble. And in case you're wondering, the shrink is not in on it, he's just doing his job. And in his professional opinion, she's paranoid. Good job, doctor. Mark has a spring in his step now that Susan's done with all this silly coma business. That is, until they run into Magnum PI in a comatose state. Susan listens to the conversation, and the movie drops us a clue.
Sign of hypoxia, doctor. Skin color and blood in the field were all red and fully oxygenated.
Because here's what they said during Nancy's procedure.
I got 90/60.
Well, she's fully oxygenated, red as a cherry down here.
Now, this dude is the chief of anesthesiology, and Mark is a politics guy he doesn't want to offend. So he drags her off to talk in private.
2 in 2 days.
You're just sensitized to it. It just happened to a close friend of yours, now you're looking for it. Twice in 2 days is just our lousy luck.
Okay, that's plausible. It's also bullshit. Only there was a way to be able to tell the two apart. Is Mark in on it, or is he just a company guy? Either way, he's not helping. Meanwhile, Susan's thinking, coincidence? I think not. So now she's back on the case. Turns out Sneaky Susan had made her own list of the 10 cases with the names and reference numbers, and now she's adding number 11. She goes to the records department and asks for their files, but they tell her all these files were just checked out by the chief of anesthesiology. So she goes to visit Chiefy McChiefy, and he's extremely offended that she wants to look over his work. Once again, we have a character when wondering, is he in on it, or is this just the ego of Chiefy McChiefy? Either way, he's not helping. Take note of maintenance guy in the back because he's important.
Perhaps something was missed.
Missed? Every professor of anesthesia, most of our house staff, more than 40 expert people have gone over these charts. You think something was missed?
I hate to pause again, but I have to. And I promise you this movie is not just a bunch of scenes where Susan is talking to assholes. It'll pick up. We have to talk about the experts. When people call upon authority, credentials, and rank, it's the easiest way to silence anyone who has questions. Like, nobody else has the right to be curious. But the experts are comprised of people who are subject to groupthink like anyone else, pressured into consensus, definitive statements, and closure, which is antithetical to scientific thinking. And they serve bosses and funders, and they like to keep their jobs like most people do. It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends upon his not understanding it. And in the end, because experts are human just like me and you, some are dumb, yes, even despite the PhD. Some have self-serving interests, and some are fine people who don't like to cause trouble. And experts, by definition, have advanced knowledge in a narrow field, which may leave out other important skills that are needed to get to the real answers. Now, I'm sorry to belabor this point, but I'd like to use an example from COVID. During the lockdown, someone posted an article on Twitter that asked, can SARS-CoV-2 come through your neighbor's toilet? Now, I studied journalism in uni, and I was taught that a headline in the form of a question was not news. It was propaganda. Because a reporter doesn't ask the reader questions. You go get the answers, and if you don't have any, then you don't have news. I also learned that the answer to every headline question was no. But here's the funny part of the story. The person who posted this article wrote, haha, that's not how it works. And when he was challenged with the question, are you a doctor? His response was, no, I'm a plumber. I guess everyone's an expert on something. So back to the movie. Chiefy McCheevy tells her to take a hike. And once again, Mark is upset with her.
Oh my God, you did. How could you do that? Dr. George is a past president of the American Society of Anesthesiologists. He's also a member of the AAAS. He's on the advisory board of the NIH.
Titles. Let me speed this up. Mark wants to be the new chief resident. He goes to visit the current chief resident, who tells him, hey Mark, if you want my job next year, you're going to have to be able to handle cases like your girlfriend. Do you think you can handle your girlfriend? Mark says he'll try. Meanwhile, Susan goes to check in on Nancy and finds an empty bed.
Where's Greenlee?
The COMA case?
No.
She was due to be transferred today to the Jefferson Institute. I guess she went there.
But the other nurse tells him that Nancy died that morning before they could take her there. And she's in pathology now for an autopsy.
Do you have a patient down here named Greenlee?
I don't know. Check in there. I can't keep track of names.
I can't blame them for being jaded, but I still think it was a good touch by the director. They've even got the sandwich in the morgue cliché. Now, they're slicing Nancy's brain with this weird machine for the autopsy, because this place is a deli. I mean, I'm rethinking that sandwich now.
Supposing you wanted to put people into a coma, what would you do?
You mean on purpose?
Yes, because sometimes you have to be able to conceive of evil and work backwards from there. Be cynical enough to entertain the idea and then rule it out, like real investigative thinking. What's funny about this scene is how quickly they answer. You know they've been thinking about it before, and how willing they are to indulge in the whole potential.
You mean on purpose?
Diethylparaminotanidol.
Oh, no. Leaves a serum tray. Carbon monoxide.
Boring.
Anesthetist feeds the patient some carbon monoxide instead of oxygen. That makes the blood very red, so the surgeon doesn't notice anything funny. But the brain dies from lack of oxygen.
But he also mentions to Susan that there are different anesthetists for all of these surgeries, so...
Hard to imagine it's murder. What do you think?
There's a conspiracy at the Boston Memorial Hospital involving all the anesthetists?
Whoop, there it is. Now, Susan's back in hot water because of the way she upset Chiefy McCheefy, but this time it goes a little differently. Once she starts crying over Nancy, he's all there. He gives her a hanky, he strokes her hair, and he gets way too physical with her. And he tells her she should take a few days off to relax and get over her grief. And she tries to do that, but her car won't start. And after having a proper fit with the car and then calming down, she notices a very creepy guy standing in the dark and watching her. Up until this point in the movie, there was no musical score, but at this very moment there was, and it was a creepy, ominous score. So she leaves her car behind and takes the metro, but then she notices the same guy following her and just missed getting into her car before it moves. When Susan told him about this, Mark was dismissive again. He's like, yeah, well, your car sometimes doesn't start. This isn't the first time this happened. I doubt that you were sabotaged and followed. Undeterred, Susan tells him her theory. She said she noticed that Nancy and that last guy were both in operating room 8. And what if carbon monoxide was being pumped into operating room 8? So Mark just gets up and says, get your coat. We're going to go check out OR 8. So they go to OR 8 and they check it out. And Susan doesn't see anything wrong with the equipment or with the tubes or anything. Also, Mark tells her that he checked and he found that on the same day Nancy went into that room, other patients went in and out and there were no coma outcomes. So it can't be an OR8 thing. Susan seems satisfied, so off they go to start their weekend away. And we get a lover's montage, running on the beach, tackling each other, rolling in the sand, walks on the pier, antiquing, all that good stuff. And they're driving home, and God, I hate it when drivers don't look at the road, even in movies. It annoys me so much. And then they happen to come across the Jefferson Institute. Remember that place? If Nancy were still alive in her comatose state, she would have been here right now. Much to Mark's chagrin, Susan just wants to take a look. Now, the building is so creepy. It's very brutalist, it's empty, and the ominous music starts again. And it's just dead quiet. You could hear a pin drop. But there's nobody around, and it looks like the camera spotted her because soon a nurse comes out to meet her. You'd think that meeting someone would dial down the creepiness, but instead it's dialed up to 11. I wish I could put the whole conversation here, but, copyright and stuff, so I'll just have to say what they talk about. Hello, I'm Dr. Wheeler. You're early, doctor. The tour is on Tuesday, remember? Oh, right, the tour. Well, I was hoping I could take a look now. That's not possible. We're simply not set up for it. We'll just have to see you on Tuesday. Goodbye. So they leave, and I'm wondering when was the last time we saw a Fiat in America? Just kidding. Anyway, they're back at work now, and everything seems back to normal. Although Susan does have a sneaky suspicion that, the chiefs are circling the wagons or something. Now, do you remember Maintenance Guy? He shows up here like, psst, psst, psst. Hey, I heard what you said to Dr. George in the lab, and you're right. I'm going to show you how it works. Come down, meet me at maintenance tonight, and I'll show you how it works. You know the cliche, right? He's going to be dead before she gets to him. And sure enough, the creepy guy who was watching her shows up, dumps water on him, throws him against the electrical thingamajig, and watches him shocked to death. And when Susan finds him, he's still crackling. This scene as a kid totally traumatized me, but by traumatized I mean I thought it was awesome. The police show up and take the body. They treat it like a workplace accident. Doesn't anyone in Boston ever suspect foul play? The guy was soaking wet and stuck on that thing. Oh well. Susan decides to roam the halls anyway. She notices this big green tank. She walks in further, sees another one just like it, taped against the piping with a tube running up. Unfortunately, she has to climb these stairs to keep following that thing. And she does climb it up until she gets to a point where she needs to make a very small jump. But she loses her shoe in the climb, and now her stockings are too slippery for her. This one's for all you foot lovers out there. So she takes off her stockings and throws it down and continues. Me personally, I have a crippling fear of heights, so if that was me, this is where the bad guy wins.
Screw you guys, I'm going home.
Eventually, she finds out where the pipe leads. Obviously, it's OR8. So she sneaks back into where the charts are and takes another look at them. And sure enough, every case was in OR8, and in every case, they were transferred to the Jefferson Institute. So not every patient in room 8 goes into a coma, but every unexplained coma happens in room 8. That tells us it's a selective process. And how would you select who goes into a coma? Obviously, this is where the tissue typing comes in. Tissue typing, then selection for induced coma, then transfer to the Jefferson Institute. What do you think is happening here, guys? So now Susan is endowed with all the facts, and when she runs home to Mark, she will calmly lay all these facts on him, and he'll believe her. Yes? Well, no, not yet, because creepy guy is on her tail, and she needs to get away from him first. She runs into the amphitheater and hides from him, but he follows her there. Then she tries to blind him, but that doesn't work either. She sprays him with the fire extinguisher, knocking him down the stairs, and then she throws it at him and runs again. She goes to the anatomy lab and then hides behind all the hanging bodies in the freezer thing. He looks beneath them, but she raised her body with her arms, and then she pushes the whole pile of bodies on top of him. You know what? I miss the strong female characters from the before times. Remember them? This one is straight, cis, white, has a boyfriend, and can't punch a man twice her size. But she's got a brain, and that's all she needs. And now the guy is buried in bodies, and this one in particular looks like he's pissed off he's dead. But anyway, the guy can't get up and she runs away now. When she gets home, she is literally hysterical. She goes on about the tube and OR8 and the carbon monoxide and the Jefferson Institute and the guy who chased her and all the bodies. And he's just, shh, calm down, Susan. Lie down. I'll make you some tea. It's okay. It'll be fine. So he makes her the damn tea, but then later she overhears him on the phone talking to someone about her, and so she bolts. She wakes up in a Boston hotel. Here's the hotel, and here's Boston. It's Tuesday. She's going to that tour. Jefferson Institute's parking lot is full this morning, and the tour begins. Nurse Ratchet here explains that this is a government-sponsored experimental coma care facility. These patients can be kept alive much longer at much cheaper cost without the expensive doctors, nurses, beds, etc. All they really need are a few technicians and lots of machines that go bing. The bottom line is that this is a warehouse of bodies on life support systems. When family comes to visit, the bodies are put into a hospital room bed. And after they leave, the bodies are put back in the warehouse. At the risk of dead air, I'll give you a moment to read this in peace. Now the tour is over, but Susan still wants to explore the rest of the building. Everyone else leaves, but she sneaks to the sides and starts to do her own exploring. And what does she find? Magnum PI missing a kidney, and a couple of guys talking about how much it's going to sell for. And she also hears the mention of a certain Dr. George. On her way out, she's spotted by the camera, and another escape adventure ensues. Susan runs herself into a corner, and it looks like she's almost trapped, but with some quick thinking, she breaks a window, diverting their attention outside, while she hides in the ceiling. And from there, she's able to roam around safely. Even when she accidentally disturbs a body, they just see it shaking and assume she ran through that room. Finally, she finds her way in the ambulance room, and she hides on top of the ambulance, and that's how she manages to escape. Susan uses brain power because she doesn't have any trans powers. All due respect to Doctor Who fans and to the entire trans community. And don't come at me. I may be a straight cis woman, but I'm also a woman of color. So if you disagree with me, you're racist. Unfortunately, no one's perfect. Susan is naive enough to go back to Memorial Hospital. She tells the boss about Dr. George. Wow, Susan, what a day you had. I'll bet you need a stiff drink. He takes a call. She drinks her scotch. She gets dizzy and her vision gets blurry, but she notices that there's more than one Dr. George. And finally, the mask comes off. Nothing more terrifying than when the villain finally admits to everything. And in her weakened state, poor Susan has to endure a moralizing rant about how some tough decisions need to be made about life, death, and the long view of medical ethics. Like none of this is about making a buttload of money.
Because society's leaving it up to us, the experts, the doctors.
Hey, there's that God complex we all know and love.
These great hospital complexes are the cathedrals of our age.
Unfortunately, I agree with the statement. And finally, he admits to her that he spiked her scotch with something that would mimic the effects of appendicitis. She finally keels over and he calls in to reserve room 8 for an appendectomy. She's desperately trying to explain that it's just the effect of the drugs, but they're not really listening to her.
Doctors make the worst patients they know too much.
So as Susan's being wheeled in, Mark shows up. Susan, where did you go? I was only talking to your mother on the phone. She was worried about you. Mark, I do not have appendicitis. Sure you do. Doesn't this hurt? Ow! See? But don't worry, dear. Dr. George Harris is going to work on you himself.
Besides, we all know doctors make the worst patients.
And why is that? A nurse comes out and tells George, we prepared OR 7 for you. And he says, but I want OR 8. I believe this is what we call the red pill moment. Now, I don't want to interrupt the flow of the movie, so we'll keep going, but you can bet we're going to come back to this moment right here and talk about it. Susan's taken into room 8. Mark runs to the maintenance area. He has no idea what to look for until he finds her pantyhose, and he follows in her footsteps. Once again, if this were me, Susan would be dead.
Screw you guys, I'm going home.
He finds a little doohickey that runs the thing, and he destroys it. Meanwhile, back in room 8, they're trying to wake Susan up. Dr. George is not concerned about that. Until she coughs, and then he is. It's all over now for Dr. George. Susan survives, Mark calls the cops, and George turns off the lights. Satisfaction achieved. The only thing missing is seeing this smug face when he finds out that his 40 experts had missed something. To be fair, it was something they were not trained to find. So now let's get back to this magical moment. This was the payoff for Susan telling him about room 8. Despite his resistance to Susan's theories every step of the way, in the end, it did pay off. So why was it so hard to convince him? Because facts alone don't mean much. Everyone has their own context and their own interpretation of the facts. You don't get red-pilled by raw data. You get there by observing patterns. And patterns equal data plus time. Actually, patterns equal data plus experience, and everybody gets to have their own journey. To use a metaphor, when you share your opinions, you are only planting seeds, and you're hoping that life experiences will water that soil so the seed will bear fruit. Mark's experience at this moment was the water. He needed to get there on his own. So, tinfoil hatters, this is the biggest takeaway from this whole video. Are you ready? Do not get emotional. Do not try to persuade, but do share your facts and your opinions and then let it go. And be okay walking away from people who think you're nuts. Tinfoil hatters need to be thick-skinned. And if you don't piss people off, one day you may hear the words, "When you first told me about this, I thought you were crazy, but now I think you're onto something." Good luck planting seeds, everyone. I have to go to the dry cleaners now to pick up my regular hats. Oh, and one more thing. If you are into conspiracy theories, I recommend this channel right here. Noor Jasmine. She's awesome. Okay, bye.
It's a scene.